Okay, here we go. All right, Meryl, so this is part 4 of our series of interviews.
Okay.
And I have been thinking that you are a tough nut to crack. But everyone is enjoying the interviews and love hearing the stories that you're telling. And so we've got a lot of questions about stories. But one thing I think Virginia mentioned is that you are always so optimistic. And I know that Bess, my wife Elizabeth, will often get frustrated with you because you're always a cup is half full kind of guy. So I'm just curious, why do you think you're that way? What about your life, or what about you think makes you so eternally optimistic about things?
Because everything has turned out all right for me.
Yeah, but you couldn't. Well, look, not everything could have ever turned out 100% all right.
Well, I disagree. I think everything has turned out.
Your mother was that way.
Pardon?
Miss G was
Miss
like
G was like that.
Oh, right.
So what are the traits of your mother? Because it sounds to me like you were incredibly close with your mom, and that's that's really really nice. What about her personality do you think you share?
Her optimism.
Yeah.
Uh,
And what else?
her smarts.
Yeah.
'Cause she was very smart, and I don't know what.
Well,
else.
love of writing,
Pardon?
love of history and writing.
Love of writing.
Yeah. And what traits of hers do you wish you didn't have, but that you have?
None.
None. Okay. And what traits of hers do you wish you had, but you don't?
None.
Okay. All right. So we're blowing through all these hard questions. As you look back on 92 years, what are the things that you thought were important as a young man, but that you realize as you've gotten older aren't important?
Good question. Have to think about that.
Okay. I mean, I'll share my own
Okay.
view. So when I was a young man, I was very competitive and wanting to be the best lawyer ever, and had that burning desire for success and for victories and for accolades. And as I've gotten older and I've watched very successful lawyers in front of me pass away or retire, and no one ever talks about them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you realize that success is very fleeting, and that it's really not what life's pursuit should necessarily be about. That's my feeling.
Athletics.
Athletics.
Because I was always wanted to be a good athlete, and I was a terrible one.
Okay. All right. And yeah, that unfortunately is something you're like God-given or not, I think. But in terms of just like things that you thought were important, like, what is it that at the end of the day is most valuable to you of all the things you've accomplished and all the business deals you've done and all the kids that you've helped raise and support?
Well, that's a long
I know.
question.
No, but it's just
I've got
one
an
question.
answer for 7 different children
Yeah.
and half a dozen different deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, the thing, and I've mentioned this before, but the thing that I find so amazing is, I believe you've shown your love by financially making sure that each one of your kids had a really good jump start in life.
Right.
And some people say, well, and I think I've been accused of my love language is money. And it's not necessarily hugs or whatever. It's me giving money to my kids.
Right.
What would you say about yourself?
Well, I've given them a good education, all 7 of them. I've got them through college, helped them financially, and done things I should do.
And I know that not all of your children have always done everything exactly what you wanted them to do, but yet you always seem to have rolled with the punches, and continue to support them and love them, obviously. I mean, is there any, what is it about your personality that allowed you to do that?
I don't know, but I will tell you a story about Bess, which when she got out of college, she and a roommate decided to have a third roommate, which was a boy.
Right, Clark Huey.
Boy.
I knew Clark, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I absolutely forbid it because I even had to pay some money to pay him off because I cannot believe anybody would have gone to the door dating her and saw a boy answer the door.
Well, yes, I remember. I was in the picture then, or I wasn't quite in the picture then, but almost. And she actually listened to your advice about that.
Well,
But she didn't listen to your advice about going to law school to begin with.
well, that's right. And she didn't listen to my advice at all about the boy. In fact, she was completely furious with me. And we were going to London, and she canceled the trip to London and stayed a day. Came a day later. Remember that,
She
Bessie?
met us in Paris.
Well, she didn't protest too long.
No,
Yeah. Well, like
it was all over. She was calmed down by then.
yeah. Well, it's like when she ran away from home, but she had to take her party shoes.
Had to come back but she had
and
to come back
for a nap. Yeah. So, which one of if you had to pick one child of yours who you think is most like you personality-wise, who would you say?
Most likely personality.
Most like you in personality. Who would you pick?
Well, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that.
And which, if you had to pick one of your children who you think is most like Betsy in personality, who would you pick?
Gay for Betsy, but I don't know who I'd pick for me.
I would pick. Well, I'm biased, but I would pick Bess.
Really?
I think she is a lot like you. Yeah.
For him?
I will often joke with her and say that I'm married to the female Meryl.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then another open question. There's no right answers to any of these, but like if people always say, well, what's the meaning of life? And I don't know the answer to this, but as you think about everything, do you think there's a meaning to life? And if so, what would it be?
I've become less religious over the years. I used to be very, very, very religious, and I'm less so at the end of life because who knows what's going to be ahead.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think most people, I would argue, a lot of people would do the opposite. They say there are no atheists in the foxhole, so people sort of confronting death, tend to be more religious. Why do you think you've gone the opposite way?
I don't know. I just, the more I read, and the more I read about religion, among other things, I worry about the 7 billion people who are not Christian.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
But don't you think though that whether organized religion may be one thing, but what about like just spirituality or the fact that we're part of things we don't understand or maybe there's another level of consciousness. Like I personally can wrap my head around the thought that there's like another dimension that perhaps that is where we go. We can't see it, but I don't know. You know, I just was curious if you had kind of any thoughts or views or philosophy or.
I hope for the best, and the best. I told William sent me a book on heaven, and it on page 23, which I remembered I sent him back. It says very few people get to heaven, and the book talks about two heavens, which are never talked about in the Bible, and the Catholic religion believes in purgatory,
Right.
which again is not mentioned in the Bible. But I hope the best I can do is get into purgatory.
Well, yeah, I hear you. Well, that's you know, it's really insightful, and you know, I think I share a lot of your thoughts on that personally. But yeah, I mean, faith is a very personal thing, and it's a touchy subject mostly. But yeah, that's super interesting. So, all right, so I'm gonna shift gears, and I'm gonna ask. Those were my questions because, you know, I want to get to know you on a deeper level, you know, on a very personal level, and really kind of understand, you know, what you feel like on the inside. And I know that that's really not a Glasgow thing. I know that the family is very loving, incredibly loving, but not demonstrably loving, usually. And so
Bessie's very demonstrably loving. I'm not.
Right. No, Betsy is. She hugs and and you bonk the boys on the head. That's how you've shown. I mean, my boys know that you love them very much, and they love you very much. And they and you bonk them on the head, probably still. And I'm sure that's the way you are with all your grandkids. So on more lighter subjects, because you know, I do want to ask the questions that I was asked. So Virginia mentioned that in her correspondence with you that you talked about the deal that you wish you had done but that you didn't do, and that was Gatorade. I never knew about Gatorade.
Right.
So tell us about Gatorade.
Gatorade was a subsidiary of Stokely Van Camp, and I was very interested in buying Stokely Van Camp because Gatorade, among other things, was a growth business. And Fenton Guinea, who was president of Anderson Clayton, said he didn't like the taste of Gatorade.
So much for that, huh? Yeah. And then, so another question I got from Walter was, you know, what are the deals that you were most proud of? And I think we've already touched on this, but of course, you know, when you sold your company, that was a major undertaking for great shareholder value.
Absolutely.
And that must have been bittersweet because you were essentially putting yourself out of work.
Well, but I had a golden contract.
No, I know that, but still, I mean,
But
that must have been frustrating and hard because, you know, when I met you, you were, I would argue, clearly you were a workaholic. You worked very, very hard all
absolutely.
the time. And then to go into basically, not retirement, but into a much more relaxed work environment must have been hard.
Well, for a year, I kept my office and secretary at Anderson Clayton because they thought I would know where all the skeletons were buried. But luckily I didn't know, but I tried very hard to find another comparable position, and I ended up as vice president of Oshman's, and then as an investment counselor.
Right.
But after about 4 or 5 years, both of them disappeared.
Right.
And I went with Bill Murphy, and I've been there ever since.
Right. Did you ever consider, someone? I mean, it's hard to just easily get another position as a senior vice president of corporate long range planning. You would probably had to move cities to get another comparable position.
I never really thought about, I never seriously thought about moving from Houston. In fact, I was very against it because we had a wonderful life here. We had many, many friends. We belonged to the right clubs and everything. So that I once went to a company in Buffalo, New York, recruited me heavily, and I even went up there one time, but I really wasn't serious about taking the job.
Well, some people call Buffalo the armpit of America. I always thought it was somewhere lower on the anatomy. And I say that my uncle lives in Buffalo. I've been there many times. It's actually a nice place. But,
Yeah.
So other than the sale of Anderson and Clayton, and of course we talked about Igloo, we talked about Gaines Dog Food. Were there any other deals that you were super proud of, or that that had interesting stories around them?
All of them, I guess, American Founders Life Insurance, but all of the smaller companies I bought, they would wink at me and tell me how they were saving on income taxes, and I never believed it, and they always were.
Who was saving on income taxes?
They were always hiding money.
Oh,
one
wow.
way or the other.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
And they would convince me that they weren't hiding money, but I didn't believe it.
Huh.
But
That's interesting. Huh. And then another question I've gotten a lot of is people want to know kind of, not family travels, but just your and Betsy's trips. What are your favorite trips, stories about your trips with Betsy? We've already talked about your favorite trip, which was going to China with Betsy and India. But what other trips stand out? The two of you just. I know you went with the Bakers a lot of places too, and that seems kind of fun.
yeah, the first long trip I took with Betsy was on her 30th birthday to the Middle East and to Rome, and we had a wonderful time, fantastic. But that was where my mother joined us in part of the trip, and where we ended up in Rome for the first Catholic Church, and Father Monsignor Carney convinced us to go to a cocktail party, and the Archbishop of somewhere, I think Philadelphia, and when we were leaving the cocktail party, he said, I will excommunicate you if you don't stay for dinner. So,
Oh, that's fun.
so we stayed for dinner.
The one story of one trip that I got the biggest kick out of that I think we should put on film is when you were in France and you went to a very fancy wine dinner and you got in because you told them that you were the head of the wine committee at the Texas Corinthian Yacht Club.
Right.
Yeah, so tell that story.
And I had George O'Leary, who at the time was the head of the Rose Country Club, write a letter. And then I got back a letter from them saying, we can't help you this weekend, but we'd love to have you next weekend. So I changed my plans, obviously. And then they have a car pick us up with a driver and took us out to the chateau. And chateau, I can't remember what it was, but anyway. We had a wonderful lunch with about half a dozen courses and a wonderful dinner. And I had the best suite in the house, and it was fantastic.
So what is the funniest thing that happened to you while you were on vacation?
The funniest thing, Betsy, what
How
do you
about
think?
when the car blew up, when you all were driving?
Burned down.
Burned down.
Well, no, yes, the funniest thing was when we turned the car.
Here, sit down, Betsy.
When we gave
Sit
him
next to Merle. Get in the
when,
frame.
when we gave him the keys back, because we couldn't give him the car, and they asked us what the odometer said. And Merrill said, "What did you say?"
I said, I can't believe that you want to, the car is a total burn down. And
But they thought we should have gotten the mileage before we got out of the car. Well, the flames were coming out of the air conditioning system, so
Ooh, yeah.
that's when we abandoned ship.
So any other humorous trip stories?
Gosh, I'm sure we had them, but I can't think of them right now. It wasn't funny, but when we had the older children and we were driving in England, we were driving out of, well, what the worst part about it was we were supposed to have a great big car. When Merrill pulled up, he and Walter went to get the car. When they pulled up, it was just a regular size car where we had, 5 children, suitcases, Betsy and Merrill. And so the back seat was so crowded. I sat in the back seat with suitcases and children and that sort of thing. But he kept hitting the curb, and the children had a fit every time. So he finally said he would grow. No, that was, excuse me, that's another story. So he promised them something, but I can't remember what it was. But they quit teasing him every time he hit the curb. And then when we had,
I always hit the curb.
Oh, I busted a tire in England because I hit the curb so hard that I
Yeah.
busted a tire.
and then another trip. No, same trip. Dean was 6, and so the other ones kind of picked on him a little bit. So Merrill said that he would grow sideburns if they would be nice to Dean, and he really came home with sideburns down to here. So it paid off. That's not really funny, but it's
I think
kind
so.
of
I mean,
amusing.
it's whatever you think is funny.
Kind of
What?
amusing.
So any near-death experiences in your life? Where like just something.
Where I fell off the mountain, Washington Mountain, and when I was in my senior year in Middlesex, and one day we climbed up the mountain and we started down it, and I lay down my pack, and because I thought it was a level ground, but it fell around 100 feet below me.
Ooh.
So the next day I went back and got it, but that was the closest to a death experience I think I had.
So you almost went with the pack down the. Oh, Lord, yeah.
Right.
So Betsy, while I've got you here, I asked this question to Merrill. I said, if you had to pick one of your 7 children that's most like you, who would you pick? And he picked Gaylord as being most like you. And then I said, well, which one is most like you, Merrill? And he didn't say, and I volunteered Bess.
I think Bess is very much like him.
Yeah, me too.
Do you remember? And this is not anything against either one of them. Do you remember that line in Gone with the Wind? You can get blood out of a turnip, something like that.
Yeah, huh?
That meant, but to me, they're kind of. I think they could get blood out of a dime.
Well, that and yeah, money wise for sure, and also just incredible stubbornness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Bess is as stubborn as Merrill.
No,
I don't think
I don't
there's
think
any-
anybody's as
I
stubborn as
don't
Merrill.
either. I
Yeah.
don't either. I didn't mean that against them. I think it's amazing that they are very, very careful with their money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that to have 7 well-adjusted, successful, loving adult children, you know, with lots of kids of their own
Miracle.
is really amazing, and
Miracle.
and that really is a tribute to you guys. And
Well, and I think back that we didn't know how to parent. We just sort of did what. It was
Everybody-
by the seat of our pants, I guess you'd say.
Everybody is in do not know how to parent when they had their first child.
Oh, you're right. But I'm not sure we even knew it at the end.
well, I have a funny Merrill story that I want to share. So it's, you know, stubbornness, and also being very pecuniary, careful about money. So we're in Sea Island, and it was before I totally gave up even trying to play golf. So I mean, I tried and tried, I was no good at it. And Merrill and I went out to play golf, and Elizabeth was in the cart, and we tee off, and I'm terrible. And so eventually I make my way to the ladies' tee. So I'm teeing off from the ladies' tee, and we come to the third or fourth hole, which is a short hole, and you have to hit the ball over a pond. Remember that one? It's a par 3, and then there's a green there. So Merrill tees off, and his ball goes in the water. And I tee off from the ladies' green, and I hit, you know how even a blind pig gets an acorn? I hit the perfect shot, and it went right on the green. I mean, like 5 feet from the hole even. And so what ensued was Merrill trying to get his golf ball out of the water. And you remember this? You were down there, like you got your shoes all wet and muddy, you got your socks all wet and muddy, and I started laughing, and Bess is like, don't laugh, he's gonna get really angry at you. And so you just would not let that golf ball go. You didn't want to take the stroke or something, I don't know, or maybe you didn't want to lose the golf ball.
I don't want to spend $1.
Yeah, you didn't want to, and so you finally got it out, and anyway, you had like a 10-hole round, and I didn't make par. I didn't putt very well, so I had like 5. And then the next tee we go to, and I go to the ladies' tee and go, I had to go back to the men's tee from then on out, and I just thought that was so funny. I love that story. You don't remember that? Well, I mean, there's no reason you should, but it made an impact on me.
Don't remember all of it.
Yeah.
But I do remember the alligator at Sea Island,
Yeah.
where you wanted to avoid him.
Yeah, of course.
They don't have many alligators anymore.
I don't. Okay, we haven't been in a long time, but yeah, the swamp is a dangerous place. So we're almost at 30 minutes, and I'll try to keep these to 30 minutes. Any other topics you want to talk about, or questions, or Betsy, anything you want to visit about?
I just think you're wonderful to do this.
Oh, I love it. I mean,
I love it. I think you should. I know you have a calling as a lawyer, but I think you have another calling you ought to pursue.
Well, the reason I thought of this is because when I was in college, I was a history major, and one of the things we had to do was do an oral history. And so I had to interview a guy that worked in the shoe factory of Carlisle
Really?
for 40 years. I mean, not, just a guy who worked in the shoe factory. And I had to try to, make it informative and historical and interesting. And to brag on myself, I did such a good job that it's still in the archives of the college. They made a big deal out of it. Yeah.
For heaven's
Then I had to give speeches at the
That is
local
wonderful.
societies about it. So, it's easy, just ask questions. But it's easier than being a lawyer, because when I'm a lawyer asking questions, I have an agenda.
Yeah.
But my only agenda for Merrill was to try to, cut past superficial stories and sort of get to the meat of the person. And I think we've done that. I think we've.
I want to tell one more story.
Okay.
About the Harvard Business School.
Okay.
Where every Saturday night you had to turn in a paper, and the one I was boastful about, and which gave me a distinction, and they wanted to publish it, was about Arbuthnot Industries, where Mr. Arbuthnot started out. Mr. Arbuthnot was not happy with his was not really paying attention to his harp playing because he was in heaven, but he was watching down where things were going on in the Arbuthnot Industries, and where the man I had hired had done all these wonderful things, and they were giving him a piece of the company as a result. And I ended up saying, Mr. Arbuthnot, remember, decided that maybe heaven wasn't so after all.
I gotcha.
Okay. End of this session. We may have some others. No promises to the gang, but keep questions coming if you want more sessions.
Okay.